everybody at week 3 of remote learning. Hard to believe it's been this long. I missed you guys, and I think you're all doing a really fantastic job. Keep it up, and I hope to see you really soon. Let's get going on lesson 10, I mean. All right. Hi. All right, so we're on lesson 10. I'm doing this again because I forgot to hit record the first time. So I have a couple of the points already plotted. But, so we're going to see graphs with proportional relationships and graphs without proportional relationships, okay? So if I plotted the points here, and what I was just saying is that this is always your x-axis, this is always your y-axis, okay? Your x comes first in a ordered pair, the y comes second. So you always have to go left or right, up and down. Think about an elevator. You got to walk to the elevator before you can go up or down the elevator, okay? So that's an easy way to think about it. All right, so I plotted these points. So I had 0, 10, so I didn't stayed at 0 for x, went up 10. 1, 8, I went over 1 for x, up 8 for y. And then I did the same here, 2 over 2, up 6, over 3, up 4. So I plotted those points, okay? What it's asking me is so if I connect these, I would use a straight edge, but I don't have one. Okay, you can kind of see that it's going to make a straight line. What the graph that's asking is, what do we notice about the graph? All right, first of all, it has a straight line. Okay. Okay, which means it could or could not be proportional. Depends, okay? I notice that it does not go through the point 0, 0. That's this point right here. It did not go through that point, which should tell me right away that it's not a proportional graph, okay? Yes, it's a straight line. It's not proportional. So what those two things mean together is that this is not, or what this tells me is this is not proportional. That's really important because that's what you're kind of looking for. That is not proportional because it does not go through the point 0, 0, okay? All right, a couple other things it's going to tell me is as x increased, y decreased, okay? So as x went up, when x went up 1, y was at 8. When x went to 2, y went down to 6, okay? So as x increases, y decreases. Okay? In other words, the graph's going to go kind of like downhill from left to right, okay? Goes down from left to right. Okay, you may notice a couple more things about the graph, the way it is. There's a pattern to it as x went down. As x went up 1, y went down 2. X went up to 2, y went down 2 more to 6. So that fits my as x increases, y decreases, but there's definitely a pattern to it, okay? So there's a pattern. As x goes up 1, x goes up 1, y goes down 2. Okay, so as x goes up 1, y goes down 2. Okay, so those are some of the things that you may notice on that graph. Let's move on. Okay, all right, on this one, it's asking us to make a graph, to plot the points, and then answer the questions, okay? So first what it's giving me is it's saying some t-shirts cost $8 each, okay? And then it's giving me the table for that, which on this one is if you buy 1 t-shirt, it's $8, okay? 2 t-shirts, it's $16. So this has to be the number of t-shirts okay? And then your y looks like the cost, okay? All right, so if I just look at that, because that fits it, I know in my head that if I bought 1 t-shirt, it's $8, 2 would be 16, 3 would be 24, okay? Just doing that, it helps me to answer these questions too, okay? So what did x represent? X represented the number of t-shirts purchased. Or how many t-shirts, okay? X is your independent variable. That means Y's value is going to depend on what I put in for X, okay? That's why it's an independent. He can stand alone. All right, what did the Y represent? The Y represent how much each t-shirt was. So the cost of t-shirts. Okay. Y is your dependent variable. Arrow here. Because the cost depends on how many t-shirts I purchase. That's why it's called a dependent variable. Is there a proportional relationship between X and Y? So there's a couple things I would have to check, okay? Are my Y over X's the same is what it's really asking me. Are all my Y over X's the same? That's going to tell me if it's proportional. Even before I graph it, before I look at what point it goes through, are they all the same? So if I went up here, if I do Y over X, okay, I'm just going to make another, this would be 8 over 1, Y over X. If I did this point, I get 16 over 2, which is, if I divide by 2, equal to 8 over 1. If I do 24 over 3, okay, that's 8 over 1. So you get the idea. I would check all of them. Usually you just have to check a couple because normally it won't go up or down if you check a few. But you do have to check more than one because sometimes you can say, okay, yeah, it's proportional, and then it turns out it's not, okay? So absolutely. So yes, it's proportional. My constant of proportionality proportion, P-R-O-P-O-R, is 8 over 1 or just 8. Okay, I don't need the over 1. Remember your equation. So if I wanted to write an equation up for this, your equation is always going to be Y equals KX, okay? So I know it's not asking us to do that, but we're going to do it anyway. It will, all proportional relationships fit this equation, okay? This is my K. So if I'm writing this equation, I would have Y equals 8X. That is the equation for this. Whatever I put in for X, if I bought 100 t-shirts and multiply it by 8, I would pay $800, okay? So that's your equation for that graph. All right, let's plot the points down here. So it had the point 1, 8. Now these go by 2's. So 1, 8. 2, 16. Let's see, which would be 16. 12, 14, 16. 3, 24. So 22, 24. As you can see, it's going to make a straight line. That's how I know if I plotted it wrong. 4, 32. That's 30, 32. 5, 40. 6, 48. 48 looks like it's right there. Okay. All right, would that go through the point 0, 0? We already know it's proportional because we checked it, but yeah, it would. If I buy 0 t-shirts, I'm gonna pay $0. So here's my graph. I'm not very good at drawing straight lines, so I'm going point to point. Now this would keep going. That's a graph that I would put an arrow on because it's gonna keep going. I could buy as many t-shirts as I wanna buy as long as I have them in stock. What do I notice about this graph? I should notice it is proportional. Okay, it has a straight line and goes through the point 0, 0. It has to be both to be proportional. Even though it didn't list it in its points, it would go through the point 0, 0. Okay, that is the main thing you should notice. What else do I notice about the graph? As X goes up, Y goes up. Obviously, the more t-shirts I buy, the more money I pay. Okay, that would be another thing. As X increases, Y increases. Okay, there's definitely a pattern. For every 1x, it goes up 8y, okay? So there's a lot of things you could notice on this graph. The biggest one is that it's proportional, okay? All right, so the next page in your book is actually supposed to be a matching with equation cards. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna show you a couple of them and show you why you would pick the graph you pick, okay? All right, so I have these two graphs. I'll show you this one, and I have this one. Okay, I'd like to be able to zoom out a little more, but I'm not going to because I want you to be able to see it. All right, so here is my equation. This is the t-shirt one we just did, okay? So this is saying 1, 8, so it's literally the same equation. We've already figured out what the, here, I'm gonna do this. So I have the back of this right now so that we can be a little bit clearer on what I'm doing here, okay? Put you up a little bit so that I can see that what fits it. Now, if I'm trying to pick out a graph that fits this equation, this first graph goes through the 0.18. Perfect, okay? Looks like it's gonna fit. Does it go through the 0.216? No. Right here is where it doesn't match. So I know that this graph doesn't fit this table, okay? Let me look at the next graph. So if I did this one, I don't know exactly what these numbers are because they're not exact on here, but it looks like it's about 8, okay? So I would look at this one too. This line would be 15. That looks like it could be 16. This says when x is 4, y is about 32. That's what that is. When x is 5, y is exactly 40. So I know that this graph fits this equation, okay? So I had to check more than one point in order to find the equation. All right, I'm gonna do one more with you. All right, if this were my graph, I'm gonna find my thing, okay. So this is my table. And what I've done here is I've said, okay, well, I'm gonna figure out what y over x is so that I can write an equation, because this is your equation and this is y over x. So what I did, and I'll just kind of write on here, is I said, okay, if I did 1/3 over 1, anything over 1 is itself, so that's 1/3, okay? If I did 2/3 divided by 2, that's the same as 2/3 divided by 2. Keep, flip, change, okay? I get 2's cross out, I get 1/3, okay? So if I went through all of these, they're going to reduce to 1/3. So I know that my k is equal to 1/3. Okay, so when I write the equation, my y equals kx, it's y equals 1/3 x, or you could write it this way, y equals x over 3, okay? Now, if I'm looking for a graph that's gonna fit, I'm just gonna give a couple examples, okay? I'm gonna look at the first point. This is 10, and that looks like it's, if that's 0.1, that's a little bit more than 0.1. 0.3, 1/3 is like 0.3 repeating, so that wouldn't fit. If x was 1, this should be 1/3. So that's not going to fit because that's the 0.12. If I looked at this graph, let's look at this one first because the other one does work. If I looked at this, I don't know really where 1 is, okay? But I do know that 2 should be at 2/3 and it's not there, so it would not be that graph. Now this graph, here's my 1, here's my 2, here's my 3 for y. It's split up into thirds. So this would be 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, okay? So if I graph this, it'd be 1 1/3, 2 2/3, 3, okay? So I know that this would be the graph that equals y equals 1/3 x, okay? As x goes up 1, y goes up 1/3. That's how I know it's that graph, okay? All right, so that was just that activity. The Are You Ready for More says, all the graphs in the activity show points where coordinates are positive. Would it make sense for any of them to have negative coordinates? Okay, while in the t-shirt one, it would not. So the t-shirt graph, no. Because I can't buy, so it's saying, could any of my coordinates be negative? So could my, oh, that's not my t-shirt one. There's my t-shirt one. So this was our t-shirt graph, okay? If X was 1, Y was 8. If X is 0, can I buy 0 t-shirts? Absolutely. I would pay $0, and it went through the 0.00. I cannot buy a -1 t-shirt, nor are they going to pay me money if I buy a t-shirt, okay? So according to the information, that would not work, okay? So it would not work if negative. Values, okay? So I have to think about what it's asking me or what it's giving me. Now, some of the other ones, okay? I really have to look at the information, like this one was, entrance to a straight park costs $6 plus per vehicle plus $2 per person. Okay, so this would be how much it is per person. Can I have negative people? No. Okay, so none of these graphs would have worked. You only saw a couple of them, but no, none of them would have worked. Okay, so you have to look at the information. To determine, okay? Okay. Okay, can I have a graph that is a negative number? Absolutely. Were the graphs that I showed you negatives? No. Okay, it didn't fit the information. I can't have negative people. I can't buy negative t-shirts. So you get the idea, okay? I could make a negative graph though. It would just depend. If I owe money, it would be negative, okay? All right, says the equation of a proportional relationship is in the form y equals kx. That should be ingrained in your head by now, where k is a positive number and the graph is aligned through the 0.00. What would there, so all the ones we looked at looked like that. What would it look like if k were a negative number? So let's say k equals a -1, okay? So that means my graph would be y equals a -1x. Can I make points like that? Absolutely. Okay? If x is a +1, y would be -1, because +1 times -1 gives me -1. If x were 2, y would be -1 times 2 would be -2. What if if x is 0, y is going to be 0, because -1 times 0 is 0. What if I had -1? I would do -1 times -1, I would get +1. Okay, so that's what that graph would look like. I'm just going to graph it real quick. So if I graph these points, I had the 0.00, I had the 0.1, -1, I had the 0.2, -2, I had the point when x is -1, y would be +1, okay? So if I kept that graph going, that's what it would look like. It would just keep going in both directions, okay? So it would look different because it would go down from left to right, but it is proportional, okay? So that's what a graph would look like if k were a negative number. All right, we are at the end of this lesson. All right, so here's your lesson summary. It goes over a lot of things we just said. Again, I put your notes. I'm losing my sun here. I put your notes online. So I move this so the sun comes back, so that you'll have them to look at while you go through this. I still want you guys to go through and fill this in. You can print out my notes to help you, but please fill this in. It will help you to write it down, okay? So read through this stuff. That will help you immensely going through the homework tonight, okay? Have a fabulous day. Again, I hope to see you guys really soon. I'm going stir crazy, so I imagine a lot of people are too. Bye.